over the course of the week, since this is like kind of been a thing, is like how we talk about defunding the police, right? What does defunding the police actually mean? And if you go a little bit before, like beyond the headline, when you see defund the police, you automatically think that that means disbanding the police department, much like they did in Minneapolis. Now, what that will look like in Minneapolis, one doesn't know because they haven't implemented that plan. But generally speaking, when people see the phrasing defund the police, what they think it means is abolish the police, right? And this is something that I think the people who are behind the defund movement are going to have to really, do a much better job of explaining to people. Because here's the thing: when people hear defund such, XYZ entity, the first thing that they're thinking about really is, if we take the monies away from these people, they will shrivel up and die and go away. And so that's. And I think a lot of it, you could tie this back into like how right-wing people kind of lean into the defund Planned Parenthood sort of, talking points that they use when they talk about the federal government not sending sending Planned Parenthood any monies so that they can, on the right, they consider all the monies that are going to Planned Parenthood money that fund abortions, and they don't want I don't want my tax dollars paying for anybody's abortion. I don't believe in it, and I don't believe anybody should have access to it. And I'll be goddamned if my money is going to be sent to Planned Parenthood. We need to defund Planned Parenthood. And the thing is, they're saying they want to defund Planned Parenthood. What they're not saying is they want to get rid of Planned Parenthood, but that's essentially what they mean. And so when people hear defund the police, that kind of thing kind of comes back into people's heads like, yo, so you're talking about defunding the police, so therefore are you saying we need to just get rid of policing altogether? Well, what that look like? Who I'm gonna call when some shit going down in the hood? Like I can't depend on Ray and them to just come through because they got the shit, you know what I'm saying? So like people they have this idea that when you talk about defunding the police, that it somehow means that we getting rid of the police, right? But I think to a large degree, and this is something that, as I've tried to educate myself on this particular topic, and as I've listened to certain activists talk about it, what they really essentially are saying is that no, some of these police departments are overfunded, and that they have an outsized budget compared to how much money we spend on other things, and we can use those dollars in other ways to serve the community. That doesn't necessarily mean that we have an overly aggressive police department, that we don't have a police department that has a goddamn tank that we'll probably never fucking use, that has fucking grenade launchers and shit like that they'll never probably fucking use. So what they're talking about is, listen, let's take some of these monies that we use, that we give to police, and spread that money out to other areas of public service that will more positively benefit the community, right? So one of the things I was kind of thinking about is like here in Michigan, I'll never forget this, man. Like we had a governor here, Republican governor by the name of John Engler years ago. And John Engler, one of his biggest moves when he was the governor was he defunded, so to speak, or he pulled back funding from a lot of mental health institutions in the state. And what ended up happening was those people who were suffering from mental health issues were where they would normally go to these mental health institutions, where they weren't going to these mental health institutions because the funding wasn't there. So guess where they were going? Some of them became homeless. A lot of them ended up in jail. And we're paying for them because we're housing them in jailing facilities as opposed to treating what's actually wrong with them. Right. And so what hasn't necessarily fallen is how much we pay police officers, or how much we pay to police certain areas. We send a lot of police into certain areas. And here's the other part. Right. And I saw that a friend of mine, she kind of presented this question on Facebook about defunding the police and what does it mean to say, for instance, take the police out of schools. And, my thinking is this though, right? I'm thinking I would love for there to be more counselors in the schools, right? More counselors who can actually pay attention to what these kids are dealing with, properly diagnose, maybe if there is a mental, if there's a mental health issue, how to properly address this kid, how to address the needs of that child while they're in the school. And maybe that child blossoms because they got the correct attention. They got the correct diagnoses. They got, you know, they were led in a direction that properly treated what they were dealing with, right? And so I would love for them to be more funding for that as opposed to the school resource officer. Now, the tripped out part about this is I can remember police officers. I want to say back in, like, I want to go all the way back to like high school. So it was high school when I first had like interactions with police officers in my school outside of the DARE program, where they were telling you how friendly they was. And like, they treated you like, the drugs was like, the drug dealers was going to be like, hey man, you need to smoke this crack, nigga. Like, really, it didn't work like that. Right. Like nigga, you want to smoke this crack or don't you? You know, like, I ain't about to force you to smoke crack sell itself. You know what I'm saying? But, nah, man, it was like you had that interaction with the police, with the DARE program. And then when I got to high school, it was like, yo, man, like the police is just in the building. Like you walking through the metal detector and the police is going through your book bag and shit. And I'll never forget, I got suspended for having a pager. Now, the tripped out part about me having the pager was that it was a pager that my mom gave me because my mom was suffering from breast cancer. And if she had an emergency at the house, she wasn't about to call the fucking office if she can get directly to me. So that's what she did. She gave me a pager. They suspended me from school because I had a pager, because at the time, they kind of thought you had a pager, you was a young dude, you was selling drugs, right? Criminalizing me for just like having a pager, while really it was just like a way for my mom to get in touch with me if something happened to her at the house, right? But we've had police in the schools for so long to where like it's almost as if like the kids have these relationships with these cops where like it's getting you, I want to say like prepared for when they starting to warehouse your ass in the fucking, state prison or federal prison. You know what I'm saying? Like in the ways in which the police would often move, in the ways in which the police would often like interact with the kids. I can remember like being, frisked at fucking school, like just coming to school and like that being the thing. You know what I'm saying? So like, instead of having such a police presence in our children's schools, how about we actually address the needs of those kids on a mental health basis? Like counsel those kids. How about we put money back into the recreational funds where these kids can have after school programs as opposed to paying for the resource officer to just be there? Like these are the things that like you defunding the police means you start putting these monies towards places where these kids can actually benefit from those funds, right? And so that's just one aspect of it. When you start talking about, there not being after school programs, or there's just not being any like public facilities where people can go to like kind of blow off steam. There is no like rec center. A lot of the rec centers, especially like I'm just going to speak for like the Detroit area. A lot of the rec centers just aren't open anymore. A lot of the schools are just not open anymore. It's funny that like you've got kids who go to school, can't afford to have lunch. They get lunch debt. And then we've got kids stepping up like, yo, I'm raising money so that we can get these kids lunch debt paid off. And it's fucked up that these kids are the ones who are taking taking the initiative on this. Like, yo, I'm raising monies to have the, so we can pay off the lunch debt. There shouldn't even be a such thing as a fucking lunch debt. We should be feeding these kids. Do we really need the police departments to have a third of the fucking budget and our kids are going hungry? Because the police department also wants to have the latest and greatest fucking tank in their arsenal just to say that they got that motherfucker, just so they can intimidate you when they do roll up on the scene when you're peacefully protesting and they shooting tear gas in the crowd. Right? So the idea of the defunding of the police is basically a reallocation of funds. It's like, all right, man, so yeah, y'all get paid X amount of dollars, this, that, and the third. All fine and good, but listen, some of this money, we're gonna have to start reallocating it to like some of these pork programs that y'all got. Yeah, we're gonna have to get rid of that because this money could be better served if we serve these kids, if we serve the community in different avenues. Like I can't tell you how many libraries in the city of Detroit are no longer open because they don't have the funds in which to open those libraries. Libraries I used to go to when I was unemployed and be going there like to use the computers to look for work. That kind of shit. Or go get a book because I ain't got cable, so I'm reading the motherfucker. All these different things, man, these public services that kind of keep the community as a community. So the defunding of the police doesn't necessarily mean that we're getting rid of the police altogether. And for some communities, it may just mean it may manifest itself in that way. But it doesn't mean that altogether, and it doesn't mean that that's what's happening all across the country when folks are talking about defunding the police. They're basically telling you like, yo, man, these monies that we spend on all of this shit here could probably be better, more better allocated towards these public services that could better serve the needs of the community. And I believe in that wholeheartedly. I want to see more counselors in the schools that directly, to directly address the issues some of these kids are dealing with at home. I want a teacher to be able to go into a classroom and have all of the supplies she needs so that she's not coming out of her own pocket to buy fucking pens and pencils, and parents are having to donate toilet paper and shit to the school because they don't have the school, like, because we've defunded the education. We've defunded education by and large. Like, yo, it's crazy, like how we don't see that correlation between the escalation of the amount of monies that we pay on policing and the divestment we've had in education, and we've seen the results of it. We've seen the results of it. Now, I know change is scary to a lot of people when you don't know what's going to be on the other side of this, but at a certain point, like, you got to try something, because we've had the police in these schools for a long time now. Like, at a certain point, like, something got to give, man. Because I can think back to when I was a freshman in high school, when I had my first interaction with some police at my school in a much more serious way than the DARE program. And here we are fucking 25 years later, and, you know, we getting videos of the school resource officer body slamming kids. We getting news stories of a 5-year-old being handcuffed in the office. We get news stories of a 7-year-old being arrested because she thrown a tantrum. At a certain point, something's got to change about that. And this is where that whole defund the thing, defund the police thing kind of comes from. And I think the wording around it may have to be a little bit worked out, because, again, when people hear defund, they're really thinking about the divestment and getting away from, policing altogether, when I don't think that's really what all of these folks mean. But yeah, man, it's definitely something that we should consider. And I think, much more serious consideration should be given from people who right now seem to be like against it, more so because I think they don't understand it really, So yeah, man, I felt like it was important to talk about that. But that's in the news.